In today's episode, guys, we're going to be doing our full album review for Lil Uzi Vert's new studio album, The Pink Tape. There was a lot of emotion that went behind this drop. A lot of Uzi fans are super hyped about this project, so I think it's fitting that Lou and I finally get into our final scores about the album and our final thoughts. And if you guys want to catch our full live album reaction to The Pink Tape with our community, you guys could check the pinned comment. But Lou, let's get into the artist performance. How do you think Uzi did on the studio album?
I mean, there's definitely highlights and lowlights. It's crazy because you start off this album with Flood of the Face, and after hearing that song, I'm like, holy shit, like we're in for a classic, bro. Like this is one of the best Uzi songs I've ever heard. You're getting him swiftly changing from one flow to the next. He has two opposing cadences, and it's that classic bubblegum trap Uzi that you know and love.
Yeah, but it has a bit of a darker and more aggressive tone to it. That's what I like about the record as well.
But then you find out that song was made in 2017.
And it was only touched up in 2022. Yeah. But regardless, though, we ended up getting it, and I know a lot of fans did want to see this make the track list, including myself. It was a snippet that I heard on an IG Live not too long ago, and I'm like, man, if this makes the final album, it's going to be a banger, and that's exactly what it was. Flood of the Face is easily the best performance from Uzi on this album. Yep. I think it is the best song. As you said, you could tell it comes from 2017, but I'm going to take that. If I could get Prime Uzi in 2023, I'm absolutely going to take that. And what I want to say about the artist performance as well, at least on my end, is that, like you were saying, there's super big highlights, but there's super low lights. And I think that when you have to play in the middle, it's hard to find a middle ground for Uzi on this album just because of the amount of tracks. And I feel like a broken record when I'm saying this, but you know, we have to be cutting down these track lists, especially for the sake of the artist. And I feel like, especially after COVID, you started to see this happen a lot more, where like people are maybe trying to recoup, or they're trying to get these longer track lists out for more streams. And I understand that, but I don't necessarily want that at the cost of the music. So I'll go through my highlights first. Another one for me was with Travis Scott. That was a big W in my book as far as a performance go. Very simplistic from Uzi. I don't really want to talk about it in the content matter section because there's not much going on there, but Uzi's using the whole like A cadence very well. He leads you in with the production too. I find it a very aggressive tone from Uzi that I like to see on the album. Another thing that for me that I found really good as far as a highlight goes from Uzi on the project was something like Zoom, and I've been waiting for this song for a minute as well. Something else that the fans wanted for a long time, but this was more of like a subdued sort of Uzi, where he's more meditative, he's more in his bag, he's more mellowed out. So what were the highlights for you on Uzi for this tape?
Highlights, obviously Crush 'Em is another one that comes to mind, but
absolutely,
a lot of songs like Crush 'Em, for example, are fire because there you have a menacing first verse, but then the hook kind of makes it drag because it's so repetitive and long. But to me, I think that my overall feeling about the artist performance is the fact that I've been saying this like before the album even came out, that I felt like Uzi was at this stylistic crossroads, and that showed perfectly on this album because it's a very varied album, and you're getting Uzi trying out a bunch of different styles. And when it comes down to it, I think my main issue with the experimentation, and I applaud them for having this experimentation and taking these risks, but the execution was not on point. Going to a song like Suicide Doors, I have to say, you were right. When you were vibing out to it, I'm like, you know what? In retrospect, the song goes hard, but it's super derivative of Cardi's vocal inflections. Same issue that I took with a song like Amped, where you have this baby voice and you have these ad-libs that instantly make you think of an artist like Jaleel. Same situation for me on a song like That Fire, where you have these more screamo type of inflections, and you're like, is this like a hidden Trippie Redd feature? Is it a hidden Trippie Redd feature? Because that's what it sounds like.
Absolutely. Even if you go on to CS, the introduction to CS, I was playing the album with Mark over this week, and I think it was at this morning session, and we were like, well, that sounds exactly like Trippie Redd. If you were to take this off of the Pink Tape and you were to hide Uzi's name on that song, you wouldn't be able to tell who's who, to be quite honest with you. And I felt like that with The Fire, because not only that, but you're getting like these Jalil-like vocal performances where I don't want to say it's a ripoff, but I mean, it's so close to it that you don't know if he's paying homage or if he's actually trying to take the flow. So that's the one thing I was like, well, I'm not a big fan of that. Another thing for CS, okay, because the big thing is that I felt like there was a lot of just covers and copy paste on the album, and I do feel like that does bloat the track list. So something like Chop Suey, I'm sorry guys, go back and listen to System of a Down, do yourselves a favor and go listen to their studio albums, because you will realize that once you start getting into something like CS, he does not have the vocal range to be able to perform these types of songs.
Well, it's also because he's spilling auto-tune all over. But I will say this, in terms of like him matching Serge's timing on like the chorus, that was actually well calculated. But I still think it's an awful song.
If you go to something like Mesmerize or even let's say, Toxicity, their studio albums, you'll understand how System of a Down actually does their stuff. And when you actually pay, I like when artists pay homage, but when it's not done properly, you see that it's lacking. And there was a part on that song where like Uzi was trying to like extend his screaming for a certain amount of time, and it just fell flat. It's as if his voice just went. So I didn't necessarily like that. Even something like Endless Fashion, for example, I think that that's a super cheap attempt at a hit. Excuse me. The whole like I'm Blue by Eiffel 65's like remake of like the 1999 Euro song. I don't enjoy it whatsoever. I think it's plastic. And to be honest with you, you go in there and even the flows that he's using with like the whole Carhartt sort of play at the end of each line, it just doesn't fit. And that's something that I've always loved Uzi for, is to be able to have these super sticky flows, but you won't necessarily find them on every single track.
Yeah, that's what was frustrating too. And like, by the way, it was Eiffel 65's original track. That was their song from I think the 60s. But
was it actually made in the 60s? Because it
was made in the 60s in Italy, bro. It's
that's
an Italian
cool. Okay,
song.
because I listened to the remake from 1999. Like that's like the one that went crazy in clubs and stuff like that. And I tried to play it back to there.
But yeah, I just don't like the fact that he did it with the Endless Fashion track, and then he also does it with Chop Suey, and you're like, this is sort of creatively bankrupt, where he has to sort of milk and bank on these older songs, and it's like, we even had the BB Rexa and David Guetta version of that come out like fucking 2 years ago. Like, how many times do you want to remake this song?
Yeah, with the same flow and the same hook, and it feels derivative. Derivative, excuse me.
Yeah, overall, I'm just like, as much as I was rooting for Uzi's evolution, it seems like the risk just didn't pay off, and I feel like he strived the most when he stuck to that standard melodic trap vibe that we know him for. Unfortunately, I wanted to see him branch off and do it successfully, but I think the artist performance is mid, because when he takes those leaps, he just doesn't stick the landing.
Yep, my score is going to be mid as well. I think that even when you have to look at some of the rage stuff that he tried to do on this album, it didn't necessarily hit for me. And that new grunt that he does, what was funny is that I was
growling. Oh my goodness.
I was speaking to Nick's brother over the weekend too, and what's funny is that we were speaking about it, and he's like, I knew you guys weren't going to like that. And he's like, it's funny because I absolutely love it. So shout out to you guys. I mean, listen, if it works for you, it works for you. But
let's go into the features now, because this was an interesting aspect of the album, because you didn't get the features you expected by a fucking long shot. You got Travis Scott, Nicki Minaj, Don Toliver. Those are pretty standard. But then you get Baby Metal and Bring the Horizon. But I want to start off with Travis Scott, and listen, man, he needs to give us Utopia, because these latest features for me are just not cutting it. The way he comes into the song with the I don't think they really hear me, and it sounds like the auto-tune just crashed because the note sounds so off, and the short feature was just lackluster to me. You have the line with like the maker hit the gritty, and you're like, come on, bro.
Yeah,
this is not a solid feature.
It's not it. I mean, it's not a horrible feature. I'm not going to say that, but it's definitely empty. It doesn't necessarily feel all that right. And then there's the whole Nicki Minaj feature. That's like one of the worst features I've heard this year.
Yeah.
Without an absolute doubt.
I got a Republican doctor, make my ass great again, MAGA. Like, it's as if she thought she was like putting in a cool punchline because she gave the acronym a new meaning, but like,
it doesn't make sense again.
It's a divisive like political slogan. Like, what are you trying to do?
I know, but that's what I'm trying to say though, is that it doesn't necessarily feel right for the track list. It feels forced for the song itself. Yeah. But listen, I really want to talk about Oli Sykes on the song Werewolf. That is a big W in my books as far as the track list goes. A song that I didn't necessarily like off of the first listen, but the more and more I listen to it, I feel like I'm watching, like, you know, the old Underworlds with Kate Beckinsale?
Yeah.
That's kind of the vibe that I get from it. Like that old, like, kind of like metalcore from the early 2000s, and just fantastic all-around performance vocally. Even Uzi's not that bad on it, because he has like such a minimal part to play on it, and I do wish that Uzi, let's say, had like a bit more of a higher, I would say, I wish his vocals were higher on the song.
Absolutely. They're mixed so low, and at the end of the day, his performance feels like an afterthought. It truly feels like I really believe that it was Bring the Horizon song that they sort of gifted to Uzi, and they did do an amazing job.
Bring Me the Horizon.
Yeah, Bring Me the Horizon. No, so it's Bring the Horizon.
Bring Me the Horizon.
You sure?
Absolutely.
Okay, my bad. Anyways, but yeah, powerful chorus, very well written, well sung. And yeah, I just feel like Uzi adds no flavor. Doesn't really have much of an impact on the track, but they did a great job. Probably my favorite feature on here. Let's talk about Baby Metal and the song The End. It's interesting because obviously you have this metal instrumental, but the vocals are very sugary, they're very poppy, and they feel sped up as well.
Well, it's KY metal, you know, it's J-pop mixed with like metalcore, and that's basically what you're going to be getting on this. And I guess what he tried to do here was he wanted to bring in, let's say, certain acts that were going to be able to carry this aesthetic that he wanted to have for certain tracks of the Pink Tape. I don't think it's their fault. I think that they do a good job. I mean, I'm not even in that lane to be able to judge it like that, but does it sound good to me? It was cool, but I don't feel like it had a place on this track list.
It's just so out of left field.
How do you get a song like this and then a couple of tracks after you get something like Zoom? That's what I'm kind of asking myself.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not even a big fan of Zoom or any of the bonus tracks. I feel like those were the most lifeless performances on the album.
Zoom on this?
Not a big fan of Zoom. And the whole idea of like,
see, that's one of my
the whole
favorites.
idea of like you have 23 songs and you just have to add 3 more because they're grails that fans love. Like, bro, come on. Like, these are not.
I respect that.
These are not top quality.
I respect
in my
that.
opinion.
No.
I like the idea of feeding the fans, sure, but I don't like those bonus cuts whatsoever. But yeah, the features overall, we didn't speak about Don Toliver actually. I wish he had a larger role to play on Patience because that whole like production had that hazier and cloudy psychedelic feel that Don Toliver is known for. Like, it was a beat that was designed for him, and he was just sort of in the background. And I would have liked to have heard a full-fledged verse from him.
Yeah, but I think he did well on the hooks.
Good song.
It was actually a good song.
Was a good song.
The Patience is a W for me.
Yeah.
I think that was a good collaboration, but overall, I think the features were mid, man.
Features were mid once again.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on. You got to get Uzi. Like, you have to get Uzi and Cardi again. Like, that was something that I really wanted to see, and I saw that a lot.
Forget that. Like, let's just look at the performances at face value. Like, they weren't that quality besides Bring Me the Horizon.
Yeah, but I as an Uzi fan, you want to see certain people make the track list, you know? And you want
I'm not going to make that, like, rank the album lower.
No, it doesn't for me, but I'm just saying is that, like, at this point, it's needed. You know, it is definitely needed. But let's keep going on with this. Where do you want to go next?
Let's go into the content at this point. And I feel like for most Uzi fans that are trying to have fun with Pink Tape, this is the last thing that they're thinking about is what he's actually saying. But yeah, at the end of the day, you have Uzi running through the common motifs that he always runs through about, him, fucking off the perk, or him telling the girl, fuck me, you get Mercedes. Like, just all of the luxury talk, him describing his fashion sense. It's all the standard stuff, you know what I mean? You're not getting anything new except for certain highlights. For example, on Days Come and Go, where he's rapping about his insecurities, about his height, also going into how he had to splash $200,000 on his friend's funeral. And I think that it's cool to see him get that vulnerable and personal because it's so rare for him. But on that same note, it's also not executed right because there's no fluidity from line to line. There's no real, I guess, narrative like that's being spread out.
I just never cared about that with Uzi, to be honest with you. Like, okay, we got some personal good stuff.
No, but it's like even when you get the personal stuff, he's rapping off beat and it's not a good song. In my opinion.
But when you have to judge the content at face value, I guess you could say there's some artistic growth on that side. But even on something like All Alone, for example, you get some cheesy wordplay about, his clique being tight like Cheerios. And then, that's kind of like the basis of the hook.
I wanted to ask you about that song. It felt like a Juice WRLD song, and it felt like it was purposely done because he has that line about like legends never die. But even the way his vocals were like somewhat altered, it gave me a Juice WRLD type of sound.
I have to go back and listen to it. I didn't pick up on it in my notes, so maybe once I do another listen or two this week, I'll be able to go back to it. But yeah, I mean, this is not an area I wanted to concentrate on too much, at least for the review. I initially went with mid on it just because like you do get certain tracks on here that are absolutely obnoxious as far as like content goes, like an Endless Fashion, for example. The hook just doesn't necessarily make even sense. Even something like, let's say, X2, like I like the quick flow at which he's at, but I mean, he's just saying nothing. And I don't know. It feels kind of weird to judge Uzi on it, but if I had to give the content the score.
But again, you do have highlights. For example, I Gotta is another one that he put true intention behind because he's sort of manifesting his own success where throughout the song, he's rapping like, I'm going to go diamond soon, that, and the other. And then at the end of the song, he says, by the way, I did go diamond. So it was almost as if he recorded the song. Afterwards, Exotor Life goes diamond, and then he came back to the song to add that line. And I'm like, this is a cool victory lap. You know what I mean? There was actually some purpose behind it. So again, there's a couple of those highlights, but overall, I do feel mid towards the content.
Yeah, because even at that, you know, when you have to look at, let's say, old Uzi projects or something else to kind of like have a standard for Uzi's content, it's always cool because let's say on something like Money Mitch, for example, like the way that he leads in his bars, or even something like a Sauce It Up, like always this super cool wordplay and always like really intentional with his vocabulary.
But no quotables here.
That's what I'm trying to say, though, is that even the hooks were kind of sour. So I went to mid with the content, but let's go on to the production. I genuinely do feel like this is probably the highlight of the album for me. And when we were in the live album reaction, by the way, guys, you can check that out in the pinned comment. I was saying how I genuinely do feel like that is probably the strongest part of it. Even once I was at like track 13 or 14, I'm like, yo, like everything sounds pretty fucking good here. So what's your take on the production? Do you think that there was a cohesive sound that was reached? Do you think that that was even the goal? Like, what did you want to go in with the production here?
Production-wise, I feel like it's very maximalist in terms of you have a lot of intense sounds. It has this rap rock sort of hybrid going on with it. There's elements of like these explosive and blaring SoundCloud type of beats that were known Uzi for. But then you also have more new metal type of production styles. On songs like the theme songs to the WWE wrestler Nakamura, or something even like a Fire Alarm. But some of the highlights for me production-wise come on Suicide Doors. I absolutely love that beat. It sounds like you're driving on a fucking speed bike.
I told
at
you that
100
was a
miles
hard
per hour
song.
during a thunderstorm, and you have these heavy metal guitar riffs and these really hard-hitting drums. That was a standout production-wise. Also, Benny X has been on a streak lately. He absolutely killed his beat on the song A, and I love that you have these haunting violin strings that cut through these booming 808s and this really thick bass line, and it just creates a very eerie banger for you, even though I feel like the beat carried the song overall.
Yeah.
But that was another highlight for me.
Well, I think Uzi did well with that production because he kind of like, he understood how fucking sick it was. Like, that was a crazy beat for me. Even Flooded the Face, I feel like sonically it's so crisp. The way that it hits your headphones is just absolutely crazy. And even I want to say this, the mixing and mastering on the project, besides like a couple of flaws, were actually pretty impressive. Like, for the most part, everything came out proper. There was no mixing and mastering issues on my end, to be honest with you. And I mean, besides that, I believe it was the verse on Werewolf. I didn't necessarily have any problems on that end. But I want to talk about Werewolf's production because you're getting these massive electric guitars and you're getting these these banging drums all the way throughout. And I really like that type of production. It sounded really good. Where I didn't like it was actually on CS because I was listening to it and I'm like, well, this doesn't sound that great all around, man. You're going through the track and the guitars sound cheap and it's like when you know what the original and what the standard is at, it's like you're automatically going to take that
to it. Yeah.
And that's what you're going to do with a remake. You have to. And then there's some people that are able to execute upon it and make it sound better. And then there's some people that aren't. And I just genuinely feel like it was not a highlight for me in my books as well.
I think my major issue sort of comes throughout the middle point of the album from like, I would say X2 to Spin Again. There's that 3-track run where you're getting these ethereal video game-esque sounding
like
beats,
Pierre
the
Bourne
samples,
type beats,
Pierre Bourne type beats that don't really go anywhere. And the problem is that some of these beats are like 4 minutes and you're having the same chord progression for 4 minutes straight and you're like, this is really dragging and it's boring me the fuck out. So,
well, you see, the only thing with X2 is that I didn't like Uzi's performance on X2, but I did enjoy the production.
I didn't like it too much.
Yeah, I like that Pierre Bourne type synth like production, and I like how it was super fast paced. It was honestly one of the only things that kept me engaged.
The tempo was way too quick for Uzi's like patient rhyme pattern.
But that
in my
was
opinion.
Uzi's problem. If Uzi was able,
so choose a different beat though for that performance.
Yeah,
like,
but I'm just looking at I'm looking at the beat for what it is.
It's okay.
Like I was trying to just like isolate and be like, well, how do I actually feel about this? And I think it was a standout on that end. I just feel like overall there was certain, like, let's say there were certain things that didn't necessarily make too much sense for the track list, but overall, like you said, it's a very maximalist production where like it's very in your face, it's very
meant
grandiose.
for festivals and shit.
Exactly. Like, this is going to be great for touring, and I think that they did accomplish that. Is it revolutionary? No. Is it revolutionary for Uzi standards? No. They tried to experiment a bit, but even at that, in certain areas, it did fall flat for the production. I went with good. I went with a good score.
I went with good as well. I think that when it comes down to this, when you have 26 songs, the presentation and the output needs to have a lot of range because you do have 26 songs. You need to switch it up, and that's why I appreciate beats like I Gotta, where you have those triumphant horns and some bells that are ringing through that you don't hear anywhere else in the track list. But overall, I do wish we had more evolving type of beats like Crush 'Em, where in the second half you have Wonder Girl coming in with these bright synths and you're like, wow, this revived the song for me. So I do think that the ideas grow stale when you have certain beats just on loop for like 3-4 minutes.
Even
so,
something as dynamic as an I Got It that has such a triumphant feel. I love that type of production because it kind of brings me back to like a Dedication series Lil Wayne type song where it's very like triumphant and it gets you engaged all the way into the instrumental. So yeah, I think good for the production, but let's get into the replay value, man. So we knew what this was going to be like even before we had gotten the album, 26 songs. And how does that affect the replay value for you, you know? Like,
yeah, I think that in terms of what he tried to do with this, he accomplished in the sense that he made a lot of mosh pit inducing bangers. When you look at songs like Suicide Doors or A or Amped or Nakamura, these are songs that are going to go crazy in live settings. So he accomplished that on that front. Apart from that, I feel like Uzi made this album for the type of Uzi fan that wants to scan through a bunch of songs, as many as you can give them, and truly make a playlist with like 8 to 9 songs that you really fuck with. And to you, that's the best thing possible. Like, I don't see any Uzi fan, and listen, maybe, let me know in the comments, maybe there are some Uzi fans that can enjoy this experience from top to bottom, but to me, the replay value is not that great just because I'm taking out maybe 6 songs roughly
that's
around
a W,
that.
though. For these modern albums, that's low-key a W.
6 out of 26 is a W to you?
At this point in the year,
Bruh.
yeah. At this point, yeah. No, it's not going to change the way that I look at the scoring for this. But I'll tell you what I'm keeping, all right? So Flood of the Face is a keep, A is a keep, Crush 'Em is a keep, Werewolf is a keep, I Got is a keep, Zoom is a keep, and Patience is a keep. Those are my keeps.
I won't name all my keeps. I'll just say what my favorites and least favorites were.
I have 7. I kept 7 out of 26.
Flooded the Face, not in any order, by the way. Flooded the Face, I Gotta, and I would go with probably All Alone. Those are some standouts for me. The songs I absolutely despised. Fire Alarm was awful. I would say The End is really bad. Didn't like Sade either. But yeah, at the end of the day, I do like the fact that Uzi gave a lot of variation because that adds replay value, that you have different types of styles to pick from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got different types of things you could do.
Still mid replay value for me. I'm not taking out much out of this.
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely going to go mid for me on the replay value. But who knows? Maybe I'll go back to this and find some stuff. But yeah, I think, listen, overall, my verdict on the album is that listen, he served his fans. Like, the fans were waiting for 3 years. He wanted to give them every single type of aesthetic he can. And he did accomplish that. I'm not going to lie. You know, you have, if you want the metalcore stuff, you have stuff like CS and you have stuff like Werewolf. If you want more of the rage type stuff, you have like the Suicide Doors and you have the Amps. If you want the classic Uzi, you have that on stuff like Flooded the Face. So there's going to be a type of Uzi for everyone and anyone on this type of track list, but that kind of does bring down the overall album experience. And at least the way that I go into album experiences, it's not like this. I don't go into an album just pick up songs, you know? Maybe that's for some people. I respect that. But at the end of the day, from a start to finish concept, it takes away from it. And I do think that, yes, 26 songs will serve the Uzi fans in the fact that they could get an abundance out of this. But for the most part, it does drag down the replay value on this. Uzi does have dynamic performances at times. He also has certain performances that totally don't make sense and that feel like, you know, hey, he's taking from another artist, like to a point where it sounds blatant now. And I also think that when you look overall, it's not necessarily a step up from Uzi. He tried to experiment. It worked in certain areas. It didn't work in other areas. So
absolutely,
I'm going to go with a mid score on my end.
I think this album has one of the worst cases of like filler syndrome that I've ever seen. I mean, you have 23 songs, which already is too much. Then you have an added 3 for the bonus tracks. And obviously, at the end of the day, like you said, Uzi could view this as them feeding their fans and whatever else. But to me, it just felt like Uzi was throwing out a bunch at the wall, seeing what was going to stick. And it felt like he wanted to spread their wings, and I respect that for what it is, but it's like diving from a 10-meter diving board and flopping on your belly, just belly flopping. It seems like a failed experiment, in my opinion. And even though there are some highlights to take out of this, I don't think Uzi leveled up in any way, and I think it's their worst effort. I'm not going to lie to you.
I think it's his worst effort? I think it's up there in his worst effort.
Yeah, as an album experience, who's going through this and enjoying it and not finding it long and tedious?
Someone said that it's like the length of Paranormal Activity, and I couldn't stop thinking about that.
Yeah, and like, listen, and people are celebrating the experimentation, but experimentation doesn't always result in good execution.
Well, I mean, experimentation on what front? I mean, Is Werewolf and CS supposed to be
They're
experimentation?
new to him. It's him. They're new for them. They're
Yeah, but,
experimenting.
Yeah, people were like, this is like his Whole Lotta Red moment. No. When you listen to Whole Lotta Red, there was nothing that sounded like that. Now you could find, you could pinpoint
Yeah, I know.
where
and
everything
now
is
people
coming
are saying,
from.
oh, this is going to grow on you guys, like Whole Lotta Red. Whole Lotta Red still hasn't grown on me that much, and I don't think
I give
this
it a good
album
score,
will.
though, compared to where I was with it, let's say
Yeah.
a couple of years ago. It's
Yeah.
definitely grown on me. But listen, man, Uzi took some W's. I think that this is gonna sell super hard. I think people are gonna enjoy this album. Is it for me? No. But hey, that doesn't necessarily matter.
Overall,
And-
mid-album.
Yeah, I'd say mid-album. And there was one thing that I saw online. People were like, why are you guys posting W for his first week sales and shit like that? Like, my music taste has nothing to do with the artist. Like, if I don't fuck with an album, I still want to see the artist win.
Yep.
I want to see Uzi take his flowers. I don't necessarily like the music, but again, that has nothing to do with the person. We've been fans of Uzi for such a long time, and even if we don't fuck with a studio album, that does not mean we will not continue to support him. So let us know how you feel about the album in the comment section. I know you guys are very passionate about this one. I tried to keep my phone off for the weekend, but it was fun. It was cool to go back through it. It was nice to be able to see all the Uzi fans come together. You guys are fucking sickos, and it was a
cool moment for sure. I
It
mean,
was
you guys
definitely
are
cool.
passionate. You guys are definitely always interested in giving your takes, and let us know what you guys would give this album based on our rating scale. And as Ant mentioned earlier, if you guys do want to catch our live album reaction to Pink Tape, the link's available in the pinned comment. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.